the one, the only, Ben Sion. Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Just Daf. And today we're doing Daf It Gittin, Daf Chaf number 20. We have a great share for you today. We'll continue talking about the Nesina of the get. Does the get have to be worth any value at all? Could it be written on a Surah Hana? That's one of the questions. It has no value. What about if you give a get, but you tell the wife that the paper belongs to you? You want ownership over the paper. She just gets the words. What about that? We'll see. We'll talk about other cases similar to that. Let's get into it. Two lines from the bottom. There was a certain person who came to the shul. Shakal Sefer Torah. He took the Sefer Torah from the shul and he gave it to his wife. And he said, "Here is your get." I mean, he intended for the words in the get. It says, "V'nasan la sefer krisos v'nasan biyada." Kasav la sefer krisos v'nasan biyada. That was in lieu of the get. Amar Rav Yosef l'may leichashla. What do you have to worry about? If you're worried, like we said yesterday, it's possible he already wrote on the sides of the parchment. He wrote in gall nuts, which over time over time disappeared. But when he gave it to her, it was visible, right? It's not effective. Because Sifrei Torah are made with the water of gall nuts. So writing gall nuts on top of gall nuts, ksav agabe ksav, is invalid. We learned yesterday. I spoke about Ima Ben Sion, why it's invalid yesterday. By a get on top of chaf and olive, imishum krisos the ispa. Maybe you'll tell me it says v'nasan sefer krisos, and maybe you construe v'nasan sefer krisos as a severance of their marriage. How about you have a cost of law? Lishma, a cost of law, the actual word law, it has to be written for this woman. Sefer Torah was written by a scribe for everybody. Maybe while the scribe was writing it, this person said, have in mind when you're writing the words, the cost of law sefer krisos, have in mind it's from my wife. Haba inan shina shmo v'shma shem ira v'shem ira. You need to have the correct name. It doesn't have his name, her name, doesn't have the name of the city where he's from and she's from. Maleka, it's not a valid get. We're learning the Mishnah on Daf Pei, number 80. Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef, what chiddush is he teaching us? It's obvious it's not a good get. So the Gemara says, She'ein mei milan agam mei milan. He's teaching you that you might have thought that if you write with walnut water on top of walnut water, it's good. No, it's not good. Amar Rav Chisda, get shekasu shelo lishma v'hever lav kulmus lishma. Let's say the get was written, it was the same person, Shmuel divorced Rachel, right? And it was written for one Shmuel, and Shmuel decided not to divorce his get. You wanted to use the get for Shmuel and Rachel. They happened to live in the same town. It wasn't written Lishma, it wasn't for this woman. So therefore you rewrite it, you write on top of it, and you have in mind for the real Shmuel and Rachel, the one you want to use it for. Banu l'machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda Rabban. Apparently, it's a subject of Machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda Rabban and the Sanya. The Rice is Harei Sheyasarach Lichtov Es Hashem. A scribe, he's writing a Sofer, he's writing a Sefer Torah, and he has to write Yud Kei Vav Kei in the Sefer Torah. Miskav and Lichtov Yehuda, but he thought that he's writing Yehuda. V'tah, he made a mistake, even in writing Yehuda. V'lo Hilta Bo Dalet, he didn't write the letter Dalet, so now it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. However, he didn't intend to write it. When you have to have Kavana, when you write the Shem of Hashem, you have to write it Lishma, the name of Hashem. So Ma'avir Lav Kul Musam Akacho. The Rabbi Yehuda says just take some more ink and write on top of it and have kavana for the shame. The Chama remain Hashem and Amuvchar. They say it's not preferable to do such a thing. Most interpretations understand this to mean it's not valid. So according to the Chama, it wouldn't be valid. According to Yehuda, it would be valid. Amar Rabacha Bar Yaakov Dimalo. Maybe it's not true. Akam L'Kamar Rabbanon Hasam Divina Zeki Levanveyu. Really, the Rabbanon weren't postling it over there. They were just saying L'Chadchila. That's why I said Ein Zemina Muvchar. Because by a Sefer Torah, you want to do it in a beautiful way. So therefore, when you first write it, you should write it the right way. Aval hacha lo, but over here, there's no inyan of zekil and reyo by a get necessarily. So therefore, maybe it's okay. Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, if I wanted to, I can find a way to puzzle, to say all the gittin in the world are puzzle. Amalei Rav in my time. What's the reason? It says in the Torah the man has to write it. The Gemara elsewhere says that the Rabbanan shifted, even though according to the Torah it has to come from the possession of the man. The writing has to come; he has to pay for it. The man has to pay for the writing of the get. The Rabbanan feared that men would not want to take upon themselves that expense and leave their wives agunos. So therefore, they shifted the responsibility to pay to the woman. So the woman paid for it. Maybe part of the takana of the Rabbanan is that when the woman would write it instead of him, would pay to have it written, the Rabbanan hefker based and hefker makna the get to the husband, so it belonged to the husband. It wouldn't be a problem. Maybe you'll tell me that the problem is vinasan. He has to give her something. And normally the parchment of a get, you can write on anything. You don't write on anything where it'll stay, the letters will stay. You write on a piece of paper, it's good. It's not even worth the Shabbat Pruta. It says vinasan. It also means you have to give her something monetarily. He's not giving her something monetarily. Dilma and the sinas ageti. Maybe he just means the action of giving over the geteda. How do you know this is true? The Shachum Itam, they sent from over there. They sent to Bavel. Kasval Yisrael Hana Kasher. The Gemara is going to elaborate on this in a second. If you write again on something which is Asr Bahana, there's different things. Look at Mitzvahs Kedusha and talks about a ton of different things that Asr Bahana. Chametz on Pesach, Asr Bahana. Basar B'chalav, Asr Bahana. You write it on that. It's kasher, even though it's Yisrael Hana. Yisrael Hana have no value necessarily. They're not worth anything. You can't benefit from them. Nonetheless, it's kasher. The paper doesn't have to be worth anything. Gufa shachum mitam. It's from Israel. Kasval Yisrael not kasher. It's kasher. We had a brisa like this also. A Mishnah al aloshel zayis. You write it even on a leaf from an olive tree. That's probably not worth a pruta. Where it says shani aloshel zayis the chazil tzarufa. Maybe there it's not worth a pruta, but it's worth some money. So therefore, it's considered money because it could be mitzvah if you could join for a pruta if you had many leaves of an olive tree. But here it's not worth it. It's not worth anything. Yisuri hana. Tanya Rebbe Omer. Rebbe says kasval yisuri not kosher. He says kosher. Nafak Levi Darshan Mishmei the Rebbe v'lo kasu. He went out to public and he said Rebbe said yisuri not is kosher. And the people heard this. They didn't applaud. They weren't accepting of it. Mishmei the Rab. And then he went out the next day and he said, I heard it in the name of many Rabban, and they said he's certainly not kosher, and they applauded. Alma Hilchas HaKavasi, the fact that Levi went ahead and tried to make sure that everyone accepted it. You see, the halacha is like Rabbi, right on Yisrael not is kosher. I'll explain why Yisrael not is kosher in Ian with Ben Sion. Right, he says you have to write it and not engrave it. The get can't be engraved. Remember the Chakika Lav Ksiva. That means that when engraving is not considered writing. A price states otherwise. Right? One of the way that an evet is yotzi l'cheres, you write a star shecher, a get for an evet. If it's written al gabe on a board or a tablet where it's engraved, yotzi l'cheres. Lo ksav shal gabe kipa ba'anduchteri. If it's written in embroidery on a woman's piece of clothing or hat or something like that, or if it's written on darkity, which the article translates as an ornament. Okay, I don't know why this wouldn't be good. I guess it's also embroidery. Right on our cap, a cap of a woman. Her Nike cap was embroidered the Nike logo. Or on darkity, or a different ornament she was wearing, it was embroidered. Right? Embroidery is not good enough. Amar Ula, but you see at least Chakika engraving is good from the first half of the Bryce. Amar Ula, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Lokash. Had the Chak Tochos, had the Chak Yorechos. There's two ways of engraving something. Think of like a coin, right? You take out a penny, a quarter. Somehow you have the head of George Washington or the head of Abe Lincoln on the penny. And what do they do when it's in the mint? Basically, it has the head picture there, even with the rest of the metal. It presses down on the rest, and it leaves the engraving of Abe Lincoln on the top, or George Washington on the quarter. That is considered to be Chok Tochos, right? It just appeared by itself. Chok Yorechos is basically where you had a piece of metal, and then you engraved in the metal to form Abe Lincoln's head or something like that. You have just a blank piece of metal and you just carved around it and you fashioned it. You did something That's closer to ksiva. It's closer to writing because you actually fashioned it. That's chok yorechos. You actually fashioned the legs of the letters, the legs of the head. The tochos lo, the Gemara says tochos is not good considered writing. Raminhu lo yakasu shokeya alaboli. By the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol, it says kadosh laHashem on the tzitz the Kohen Gadol wore. It was bolate. It wasn't depressed. It was actually sticking out. Kedin reizav, like golden coins. Hadin reizav tochos saying golden coins normally made through tochos. So it says also by the Kohen Gadol, it says michtav writing. So it's considered writing for that. So you can see just like coins are writing, that's writing also. So the Gemara says, kedin reizav lo kedin reizav. It's partially like golden coins. Kedin reizav the bolate. It's sticking out like Abe Lincoln's head. Lo kedin reizav dilo hasam tochos hacha yorechos. Here, when they're talking about the sits, what they did was they actually had a flat piece of metal and they fashioned it into Kodesh Lashem, which was chok yorechos. I'm like Ravina Ravashi, rushma michrach charetz o kenufei mechnev. When something is roshem, which is basically engraved, is it made by? Basically, there's two ways. Is it made by just depressing the rest of the metal, leaving something there? O kenufei miknaf, or actually carving out the letters. Amalei michras charetz. He says it's considered to be depressing it. It's not considered writing. Esive, after a question from Raisa, loya kosvo shokeya ela bole kedin reizav. The sits of the Kohen Gadol was depressed. It was sticking out. It wasn't depressed. It was sticking out like the gold coins. They have imprints on the gold coins. If you'll tell me that it's considered to be depressed, Haba'ina, Chafam Abayz, Michtav. It says Michtav, a writing, Valeka. You don't have this. So the Gemara answers, Kedin Rezav, Velo Kedin Rezav. It's partially like golden coin. Kedin Rezav, the bowl, like it's sticking out. Velo Kedin Rezav, Dilo Hasam Migavai, Behacha Me'avrai. Here, what they did is, by the sits of the Kohen Gadol, they actually went from behind. They went from behind and engraved. They had a flat piece of gold, and they went ahead and engraved up and made it stick out. By golden coins, what they did is they had a flat piece of gold, and they depressed on the sides, which is, as I explained, tochos, and it's not good. Bar Meir Rav Nachman, Kasav la get, al tas shel zav. He wrote a get. Right, he engraved it, did chok yorechos, the right way. Al tas shel zav, on a plate of gold. The gold was worth at least 200 zuz. Amr like skabla gitech v'skabla ksuvah. So technically, it says both your get and payment of your ksuva. He doesn't have to pay in kesef. He can pay in shavek kesef also. Gold is worth money. Mahu. Amr like skabla gitech and skabla ksuvah. It works. She has accepted her get, and she gets paid her ksuva. ACV or Brisa, where they asked a question, based on the Brisa who asked the question, is Kabla Gitech Vashar Ksuvasech. Take this get on a golden plate. Vashar Ksuvasech, and the rest of the gold, whatever's written, the words, that's for the get. And the rest of the gold is for your ksuva. This Kabla Gita Vashar Ksuvasech, the halacha is, her get is a good get. And the rest of the gold is for a ksuva. Taimad Ikashar. That's only because there's extra gold left over, 200 of extra gold. Haleka shar, there's no other law. Low. If the get was just a plate of gold, and exactly on the plate of gold there was written the words of the get. Harayat mutaras l'chola, that's the basic words of the get. If that's all was written over there, even though itself the gold was worth 200 zuz, that wouldn't be good. You need extra gold to be worth 200 zuz. Gemara says, "Lo, who didn't afagav the lake shar? Even if there's something extra, but how the kamashlan? Why do they say there's a shar? Afagav the shar, even if there's extra gold, amar la in, ilo amar lo. If he said the rest of your ksuva, then it's for the ksuva. If he didn't say that, we don't assume it's for the ksuva, and it's a gift, then he has to pay another 200 zuz. My time, avira the megiltahu. The reason he gave it is just like when you give a piece of paper, right? The writing is not on every inch of the paper. There's extra paper here, so if he writes on a plate of gold, there's also extra gold." Tana Rabban, raise a gite fanaya shali. He says, I'm giving you a get, but the paper belongs to me. Eina migurashes. This is not a get, as opposed to we learned on Amud Aleph. Yisrael is a get. I'll explain the difference in Enod Ben Sion. He says, this is a get, but you have to give me back the paper. I raise him Goreshes because it's called Matana Manas Lahasir. And the Gemara in the Kedushin says, Matana Manas Lahasir is Shema. Matana is considered a Matana. Vayrav Papa, Bein Shita Lashita, Ubein Teva Lateva Ma. He says, here's your get, and I want the parchment or the paper back between the lines, or between the words, my. Or it says Teku, we're unsure. But Tepuk lay the Sefer Echam Arachman of Lo Shnayim with Sfar. It says, because of lost Sefer Kri, so Sefer has to be one. If you cut it in different parts, that's 2 or 3, so it's not kosher. The Gemara says no, because there are certain letters like Kuf and Lamed where the letters go down to the next line. So therefore, it could be it's connected. If you wrote it in a certain way, that there's a Kuf and Lamed on every line, so it'll be connected through those things. It won't be two different parchments, and maybe it's kosher. The question is, do you need to have the entire piece of paper or not? This man, he had an Eved Knaini, and there was a get written for his wife on the Eved's hands. And then one day, all of a sudden, we see the woman walks into the basin and she's in possession of this Eved. Do we say he gave this Eved to her as a get? Oh, Dilma, maybe the Eved walked over to the wife and he never gave it. Do we assume she's Megoreshes or not? The cost of Shiachli is the Rava says, first of all, it's a different problem. Writing on someone's skin could be erased. You take a shower, you can erase ink very easily from a person's skin. So that's not kosher. Rava, according to Rava, who's asking this question, the question from our Mishnah, Al Yad Shal Eved. Right? The Mishnah has a machlokes to Rabban and Yossi Aglili. The Rabbanan say you can write a get on the hand of an Eved. How could that be? So the Gemara said it's probably Yachali's Daif, right? You could erase it. The Gemara says Bishlam Mastis in the Rav. Wrote down a question from the Mishnah. Lo kash. Adam is here. Lezer. The Mishnah is according to Belezer. Belezer holds that the important Adam are the Adam Masira. So therefore, even though the signees of the get, their signatures could be erased, that's not important because as long as 2 Adam witness the giving over the get, that's what's important. Elo l'Rami Rachama kasha. According to Rami Rachama, right here, in this case, there was no Adam Masira because no one ever claimed to see that the husband gave this Eved to the wife. One day it ended up in the wife's possession. So there's no Adam Masira. We have to rely on Eidei Chasima, and then according to our mayor, who says Eidei Chasima Karsi, you can't have Ksav Shiachali's Daif. It can't be something that's forged. So the Gemara said, here we're talking about where it was a tattoo. It was written in the Eved's skin. It can't be erased. Once you say that, Mastisa Nami Lo Tikshi. They don't know a question from Mishnah either. B'ksovas Kaka. Let's talk about a tattoo. My heavy Allah. What's the answer to the question? Tashma Dam Reish Lakish Hagodrosh Einlan Chazaka. Reish Lakish is a famous rule that animals that walk around a lot, even though I'm in the possession of an animal, and someone else comes and say, hey, it's my animal, you took my animal, just because there's a concept, there's a chazaka, was ever in my possession, we assume it belongs to me. If it's an object like an animal, a cattle, which move around a lot, and it could have just left someone's pen, we don't assume the concept of a chazaka. We assume that whatever in your possession is yours. And similarly over here, an eved is a person. He can walk around like an animal can walk around freely. So therefore, we don't assume that the man actually gave it to the wife, and it's upon the wife to prove that she's actually Megoreshes. That's the conclusion of today's share. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where I talk about this famous halacha that you write a get on Yisrei Hana, you're kosher. It's kosher, as opposed to on Chaf Ben Beis, where we said, if you write a get and you say the paper belongs to me, I'm giving you the letters, but the paper belongs to me. That's not a good get. We'll explain the difference. Ian with Ben Sion coming up next.